All right, so let's give a warm round of applause for Amos, everybody.
I broke this table yesterday at lunchtime, so let's try not to do that today. 5 more minutes. Working smarter, not harder. So this is the 4th year that I've been here on stage at this conference. It's been amazing. There's really 3 things that I love about this conference is old and new friends. I met 2 new friends last night, Bryce and Henry. They texted me their birthdays so that I can send them a happy birthday next year. That's something I do all the time, send crazy videos. So if you want them, come give me your birthday and your phone number. But the big thing also is that we are always here to elevate each other at this conference, I've noticed. Like, everybody is willing to help out and work with each other. So every time Bruce has ever mentioned it to me, I'm like, yeah, I want to come back. I want to come back. Everybody makes me better. And the last, if you've ever been to the airport here, is like, it just starts as soon as you land in Chattanooga. The Chattanooga art scene is absolutely amazing. This used to be like front and center, and I heard that they moved it, but the sponge display at the airport is phenomenal. Take a chance to stop by it. It is life-changing. So I think most of the things in the next slide Brett already said, except for this top one here. I'm a father, I have 5 kids, and my oldest had a baby on Christmas Day. So now I'm pops too. Thank you. I found out right before last year's conference that she was pregnant, so it's been amazing. Also life-changing, kind of like the art. Uh-oh. Oh.
It's your birthday!
That's what I sent to Bruce. I'm just like screaming into the camera. And also down at the bottom, I'm a board member of the Erlang Ecosystem Foundation. If you don't know what that is, I encourage you to get involved. We give money to projects that try to further the Beam environment. In the last year, we gave a really large grant of $40,000 to work on the ARM32 JIT. We have open telemetry stuff going, OpenID, Connect clients, Exorcism Gleam course, and we even sponsor student tickets to conferences. So get involved with that and figure out how you can help further this community too. And if you want to talk about it, come find me. All right, so that's today, but now we need to go back in time. I'm going to take you back roughly 17 years. I worked on a project that was secure chat software, and it ended up being my introduction to the Erlang ecosystem. We wrote the server in Java, and later it got changed into Erlang and kind of blew my mind, the things that I saw. But I'm not here really to talk about that transition in Erlang. I had a really great team, and I was fairly new. I'd only been working a few years, and we had Nate, who is the CTO of the company, and he would come up to me and he would say, hey Amos, do you have that Diffie-Hellman key exchange protocol finished yet? And I'd been working on it for probably days. And I said, oh yeah, I'm real close. Just 5 more minutes, 5 minutes. And then a few hours would go by, or maybe even more days. And he would stop by and say, hey, did we get that key exchange deployed? And this is my resting developer face. And I'd say, I had a little hiccup. There was one more thing that I noticed. So not quite, just 5 more minutes. And more time would go by, and Nate would come back, and he wasn't trying to prod me. He really probably wanted to find out if I needed help. And are you done with that security story yet? And it's getting dark. I'd say, Nate, I'm almost there. Just give me 5 more minutes. And it wasn't just me. I noticed it from others around me. And it might not be 5 minutes. It might be 20 minutes, And my team was really good about trying to figure out how we could get better and how we could improve this. And I was feeling pretty awful about this. And so I brought it up to the team. And so Kaizen is a Japanese word. You might hear it in Lean or Toyota manufacturing books and processes, and it is the continuous improvement cycle or change for the better. And Kent Beck, I think, put it great in Extreme Programming. Change is inevitable, but change creates the need for feedback. So that's what I needed. I needed feedback. I had no feedback other than my immediate response whenever he asked me, and I really didn't know where I was, but I thought I did. So I started asking for it. In that feedback, you have to think about a lot of different introspective moments of yourself. Where am I? Where do I need to go? This comes actually from the Psychology of Computer Programming. These are the steps, Gerald Weinberg. It's a fantastic book. So introspection is looking deep inside yourself, figuring out where you are, where you want to be. Then observation is looking at the outside and the things that are affecting you. Experimentation are just little changes that you want to make. And then measurement is taking that feedback from those measurements and trying to continuously move forward. And sometimes, when I say a measurement, we're at a tech conference, everybody wants to talk about data. They're like, oh, well, what do you measure? Sometimes feelings are okay, right? Your feelings are a fantastic measurement, which is weird coming from me because I used to say they're just feelings, they go away. And if you're that kind of person, I've got a little story for you. I had 2 roommates in college. This actually involves chat software too. Before everybody was worried about security in chat software, one of the roommates would stay up late at night talking to his girlfriend on the computer. She went to a different school, and it bothered the other roommate a lot. He was really annoyed with it. So he decided to route all of that guy's internet traffic through his computer. And every time that my friend would say love, he would change it to like. And every time his girlfriend, when it was come back through, would say like, he would change it back to love. So my friend types, I love you. She's like, what do you mean you like me? And he's like, I love you. They're married now. They have a couple kids. They're happy and have been married for many years. But it was pretty entertaining. So yeah, the level of your feelings really matter. So how do we get to that introspection? We need to understand where we are if we want to know where we're going. So where was I? What was I doing in those moments when he would come up and say 5 more minutes or the moments before? I was churning. I had no idea what I was doing. I was stressed out. I didn't know I was stressed out, though. Sometimes I was staring at the screen just wondering, what do I do next? Why is this test failing? Sometimes I was looking for answers. What does AF mean? Once you become a grandpa, you have to be old enough that you need to look stuff up like this. I was looking at code, and then also I was pulling my hair out. And I didn't know that I was pulling my hair. I remember coming home distinctly multiple times, and I worked 100 miles from where I lived, and I get home, my hair would be standing up like this, and I didn't know. And my wife would go, oh, hard day at work? I was like, actually, yeah. And she's like, your hair's sticking up. And then she pointed out that when I think, I do this a lot, and I would just do that all day. Is it standing up now? We'll just leave it that way. But I didn't know. I didn't know that I was lost, and that was a really hard realization. But so now that I had looked at myself, looked at what was going on around me, where did I want to go? I wanted to move faster. Right? I wanted to be like Speed Racer, and he's in the Mach 5, so he knows about 5 more minutes too. I'm pretty sure that that's where that came from for him. Okay, so I'm old enough that I actually watched this on TV. I don't know if anybody else still sees this. Okay. So I wanted to move faster. I didn't want somebody to come up and ask me all the time because that felt like I must be going slow, even though they were really just concerned and wanted to help out. I was looking for enlightenment. I wanted to be better, and not better today, not better right now. I tell my kids all the time, I'm looking for you to be happy, healthy, and safe. Those are my goals, and that's what I wanted for myself too. Now, my teenagers are like, well, this doesn't make me happy. No, it's not now, it's over your life. I want you to be happy, healthy, and safe. And so that's what I was looking for. And every time I said 5 minutes and then I didn't deliver on that, I felt like I had no integrity and that I was tearing apart that relationship. But really, more than anything, I wanted no interruptions. And what I realized here too is that guy in the background, I think he must be QA because he's looking at the front of the monitor and the programmers are looking at the back of their monitors. I don't know. But yeah, I didn't want to be interrupted. So how was I going to move forward? Well, everything for me has been about feedback, getting feedback. I needed feedback. And my team had systems in place for getting feedback. I asked ChatGPT to give me a picture about feedback. So it's creepy, but it looks kind of like a Salvador Dali painting, actually. So we had this built-in weekly retrospective. And I know that some of you probably hate retrospectives. You've been in them, you feel like you're just being told what you're doing wrong, and you're not gonna, like, what is this? It sucks. It's not about being wrong, though. It's about building on your strengths to overcome your frustrations and helping make a team happy, healthy, and safe, right? Those building little experiments, celebrating wins together, and then finding out how to have more. So it was weekly, which felt great, but I got a little bit of feedback. I needed more in order to make sure that I wasn't, how was this gonna help me with that one ticket know that I was more than 5 minutes from done? So I started asking. And of course, this is one of the things that, this is how I got into the psychology of computer programming. Somebody handed me the book and they're like, you need to read this first. And he says, Gerald Weinberg says, a true professional with true strength loses nothing by admitting your weakness. And so they were like, you need to just admit your weaknesses, Amos. Thanks, guys. That didn't really help. It just made me feel worse. So then they're like, well, we've got code review, right? Where's Todd? Todd, you still in here? I just remember him talking. I hate code review. I actually do. I think it's mostly worthless, other than to every once in a while learn something interesting that somebody else does. And so after Todd's talk, I heard him talking, and I said, you know what? I need to pull up the right code review. So I found this one from an open source project, NOx, and right there, looks good to me. It's my favorite feedback. So we went from a weekly, right, feedback to like this is ticket level, which sometimes could be a couple hours, sometimes a couple days, sometimes it goes beyond the retrospective. So it wasn't tight enough for me. I just wanted it. I needed more. I needed more feedback. And it's too little, too late. By the time I put this out, I've already been asked 10 times. Are you 5 minutes from done, Amos? Maybe 2? I don't know, 20? So throughout the retrospectives, through the code reviews, I said, well, how can I make this smaller? And this is probably one of my favorite things. I started a programmer journal. So for like 17-ish years, I keep a journal next to me on my desk 100% of the time when I'm working. When I run into problems or questions or something exciting or something I just want to like research later, I just jot it down in the journal. So here's some of the things that I put in my journal. Difficulties I'm having, crazy ideas. Most of my ideas are crazy. You can ask Flora. I just make stuff up at work all the time. Observations that I have about my code, other people's code, things in the system that I'm like, oh, I wonder how this works. Questions that are also often crazy, like, hey, what if we did this and we used only strings for all of our data? What if we used HL7 to store everything? Which, if you've ever worked with that, it's awful. I write prose in there. I'll just like write paragraphs. You'll see that on the next slide. I have it. And then whatever works for you. Put what works for you. But the idea is that at the end of the day, I go back and I read that. Sometimes I add more to it. This is one of mine. I think, what's it say up there at top? There's a question right on the top. Where should I use an opaque type? And then I leave space. And at the end of the day, I take the time to write it. And the hardest part was remembering at the end of the day. So I wanted to build a habit around this. I needed feedback right away on building the habit. So in Atomic Habits, I'm blanking out on the author's name right now. He talks about, James Clear? Yes, thank you. Building habits. There are 4 steps to building a habit: a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. So the cue is something that's already happening. So find a habit that you already have and try to turn that into your cue. Craving didn't really come until I started adding the reward to the end. But what I would do is at the end of the day, I would say, you know what? I'm not going to move till I've done this because I'm getting ready to go. And so that was my cue, is like packing up for the day. My book would be sitting there and I'd fill it in. But I decided that I was going to eat ice cream every time I finished this. After a couple weeks, I had to buy new pants. But I was on a roll, and now I've been doing this for 17 years. Other things that really help with me is I got other friends involved, and I said, hey, why don't you guys make a journal? Let's share our journals and talk about it. And then James Clear also suggests putting money on it. So I have actually paid a friend every day that I didn't do this. I'd give him $1. After about 3 weeks, you're like, shoot, I can't afford ice cream anymore. But this was daily, and it's still, it helped me, and it helped me learn, and it helped me grow, and I got faster. So it helped me with the faster part, but it didn't help with the interruptions. And it didn't help with knowing, when I got asked, how long am I going to be? So I had to look further. And this is kind of my own invention, the Power Hour. Maybe a little bit off of Pomodoro techniques, if you've ever heard of that. But I set a timer for an hour, and I plan what I'm going to do in that hour, and I share that on the ticket. And then the next hour, I do it again. So it's little, tiny plans along the way. E.L. Doctorow, one of probably the greatest novelists in the United States. You can argue that if you want, but you're wrong. Says writing a novel is like driving a car at night. You can see only as far as the headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way. And that's how I felt like the stories were, the tickets. They were bigger goals than I could actually keep in my head. There's only 3 estimations that I can even understand. 1, no clue, and too big. And so if it wasn't like an hour ahead of me, I didn't really know. I just thought I did. And I got sidetracked. So giving myself a little bit of looking in helped. Because see, we typically can only hold 7 things in our brain at one time. And so you have your ticket that's huge, and you have this list of to-dos in your head, and they're stored in 7 of them. David Allen, in his book, Getting Things Done, calls it your psychic RAM. And it's limited. So if you have these steps in your head, now you can't think about the problem in front of you, which is going to slow you down, because part of your brain is saying, okay, I got to remember to do this, I got to remember to do this, I got to remember to do this. So I fill it in on the ticket. And if you don't believe me, I'm sure that some of you in here have had your mind wander in the last couple minutes, not just because I'm boring, but also because I bet some of you, raise your hand if you thought about something you need to do later. Yeah, see? So you're spinning your cycles on that. Write it down, get it out of your head, put it in a place where you'll be able to look back to it. So in these tickets, I'm going to show one in a little bit, but here's what I do every hour. I write down what I did in the last hour, anything that I learned that was interesting, that can help further the team, the trade-offs and how I decided to implement what I did in the last hour, any questions I have, and then what I'm going to do next. Or maybe the next 5 things I'm going to do. If I have a bunch of ideas, I'm getting them out. What do I need to do? The amazing thing is when you start doing this, all the interruptions go away. Your managers can see this, and the 3rd or 4th time that they come and say, how long do you have? You're like, oh, I documented this, and you read it to them, and you tell them about it, and then they stop asking you questions. Because most of the time, they just want to know that you're moving and that you have thoughts. The other great thing about this is when you come back an hour later and you want to write down the same thing, you now know you're stuck. You now know that you're more than 5 minutes from done, and you probably need to reach out for help. So this is, the names have been changed because I was told I had to change the names, but this is one of ours from recently. I went and edited the HTML so that you guys can't see all the secret stuff, but this is really what they look like. They're real short, they take less than 5 minutes. So this is really like the crux of what helps me make it through my day. And then from here, there's only two really small things. TDD is the smaller step. It is what is the very next thing that I'm going to do? And for me, this really helps me focus in and not get sidetracked. Any of the sidetracking things, I might hop into the ticket and type something in if I notice something here, or write it in my programmer journal if it's unrelated to the ticket, but more programming overall. But that little feedback cycle of, you know when the next thing is done if you've written the test, because the test will tell you. And it really keeps my ADD at bay, I guess. What are we doing? Anybody want to go ride bikes? And last, but certainly not least for me, is pairing. I think that pairing is the greatest feedback tool there is. It is real-time feedback. And I was talking to Chris, I don't know where he went. He was checking people in earlier today about this and different types of pair programming. And I brought up strong pairing, which I think is probably the best way that I've ever had feedback. It helped me learn, it helped me grow. So what strong pairing is, and if you don't like pairing, I would say try this, is when you sit down and you have an idea, it has to get into the computer through your partner's hands. And when they have an idea, they have to stop typing and get it through your hands into that computer. Doing this makes you have to think about what you're doing and be able to explain it well. So you're teaching through that process. And if you are new and maybe you don't have all the tools to be able to build it yourself, but you still have ideas, now you can say the ideas and let the more experienced person walk through and do the actual code. And that feedback right there really did help me a lot early in my career, of knowing that we weren't even close to done, or we were really close to done, and I could give that feedback. But in order to learn, we have to acknowledge that there is something we don't know that might be worth knowing. And that is where I got all of that I didn't know. I thought I knew everything. I thought I was like the world's best programmer. Now I realize I'm probably the world's worst programmer, and had people giving me feedback. So tighten your loops, tighten your feedback loops, find ways to shorten that loop, because the tighter you get that, the better you can react to it and build in the future. So I have one more. I don't know if it's good.
Take it one step at a time. Identify the problem, fix it. Identify another problem, fix it. Repeat as necessary until it's all fixed.
So go out and fix it. That's it. Thank you.